Everyone laughed when she said it. My sister smirking like she'd won some private game. My name is Madeline Cross, I'm 34. How could someone I grew up with take joy in humiliating me in front of the people I once trusted? The cold December air bit at my cheeks as I approached the house. Christmas lights flickered on the front lawn, but they felt more like eyes watching, judging. I stopped at the door, hearing her voice echo in my mind, that cruel laugh, sharp and final. My hand rested on the brass doorknob, but I didn't turn it. I didn't need to. I already knew what was waiting inside. The warmth of the hall hit me the moment I stepped in, a deceptive glow. People were huddled around her, raising glasses, their eyes glinting with mockery. I placed a single sheet of paper on the table, just one, and let it sit there. As I walked out, the sound of my heels against the cobblestone driveway was the only punctuation to the silence I carried. In that moment I realized something unsettling. Sometimes the quietest presence can echo louder than laughter. The snow crunched under my boots as I walked away, but I didn't rush. I let each step settle, as if the world itself needed to feel the weight of what was coming. The paper I left behind was simple, just a note, but it held a storm my sister would never see coming. By the time I reached my car, my phone buzzed once, then again. 45 missed calls by the time I slid into the driver's seat. I didn't answer. Let them stew. Let them wonder. The anticipation, the unease, was part of the plan. Inside, the house had grown louder, more chaotic. I imagined her smirk fading, the laughter strangled by a creeping confusion. For years she had thrived on my absence, on the poor lady image she forced on everyone. But tonight she didn't know the rules had changed. I glanced at the rearview mirror, seeing my reflection framed by the dim streetlight, a calm mask hiding the satisfaction growing quietly inside me. The bitter taste of every insult, every mocking word, lingered like smoke. And then, almost casually, I understood. Revenge doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it whispers, and the silence that follows can be deafening. By the time I got home, the wind had turned the night into a frozen whisper. I poured myself a cup of tea, letting the warmth seep into my fingers, but my mind was far from comfort. I imagined the house, the party, in disarray. The note was simple and signed, but precise. It carried a truth no one could ignore. Her laugh had always been a blade. Now I was sharpening mine in silence. I pictured her pacing the living room, realizing the caterers hadn't arrived, the DJ's equipment missing, the lights inexplicably dark. The murmurs of confusion would grow, questions bouncing from guest to guest, while her carefully constructed facade began to crumble. I smiled faintly, but it wasn't joy. It was recognition, of patience, of restraint, of timing. For so long, I had let her control the narrative, dictate the jokes, define my place in every room. Tonight I had written my own lines. The phone rang again, another string of unanswered calls. I imagined her voice now, sharp, panicked, calling out for help she could never pinpoint. And in that imagined panic, I felt something new, the quiet elegance of justice unfolding like a shadow across the room she once ruled. By midnight I could almost hear the echoes of the party collapsing. I didn't need a window to see her panic. It radiated through the tiny messages, the frantic calls, the texts that went unanswered. My sister had always believed control was a weapon. Tonight she was unarmed. I sat by the fireplace, the glow reflecting on the cup in my hands, and thought about all the years she had laughed at me. Birthday dinners, family gatherings, casual comments that stung like ice in my veins. Each memory was a thread, woven into the quiet tapestry of this night. I traced them in my mind, letting them settle. The paper on the table wasn't just a note, it was a mirror. It reflected her arrogance, her cruelty, the hollow triumph she always sought. And mirrors, I realized, have a way of showing people exactly what they don't want to see. Outside, snowflakes fell silently, each one landing softly, unnoticed. Inside, chaos was growing, a symphony conducted by absence. I leaned back, listening to the silence, the only sound that truly mattered. Tonight the joke wasn't on me. It was finally on her. The next morning I woke to an empty house, though my heart felt full with a strange, calm satisfaction. I brewed coffee, the aroma curling into the quiet kitchen, but I didn't rush to check my phone. I wanted to savor the aftermath, the space where her chaos had begun to collapse. By now word had traveled. Guests whispered in hushed tones at work, in the hallways of family homes. I heard snippets through mutual friends, indirect confessions. The catering had been cancelled at the last minute, the DJ's truck had broken down and the lights, somehow, never turned on. My sister's name was on every shaky sentence, paired with confusion, embarrassment, and disbelief. I didn't gloat aloud. That would have cheapened the moment. Instead, I let her reputation unravel silently, like threads pulled from an old tapestry. The same sister who mocked my poor lady existence now scrambled, trying to salvage a scene that no one would forget. I imagined her pacing, her phone glued to her hand, her voice rising in panic while no one answered. It was a lesson she couldn't lecture over. A humiliation she couldn't erase. And through it all I remained invisible, a quiet storm in her midst. I watched as the world she had manipulated for years tilted slightly, just enough to show her the fragility of control. The paper I left, the single seed of this unraveling, had done its work. A simple note, no names, no threats, just truth placed like a candle in a dark room. And sometimes that's all it takes. Light where there once was shadow. Exposure where there once was arrogance. In that calm I realized revenge is rarely loud. It's quiet, patient, and infinitely more satisfying when it leaves the guilty to unravel in silence. By late afternoon the text had slowed, but the tension lingered like smoke in a closed room. I sat by the window, watching the dull winter light fall across the empty street, each shadow a reminder of the quiet victory unfolding. My sister's carefully curated image, the one she wielded like armor, was beginning to crack. I remembered every word she had spat at me over the years. "Poor lady," she had said in front of everyone as if the world agreed with her. How easy it had been for her to twist reality to make me small. But tonight, the world had shifted just enough for her to feel the weight of that cruelty, mirrored back with the precision of a scalpel. The recurring motif, the paper, had become more than a note. It was a symbol. Patience, silent strategy, and the power of observation. Guests spoke of the party in whispers of disbelief, their loyalty unsure, their mockery replaced by pity and unease. And I realized something crucial. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about balance. Every laugh she had stolen, every glance she had twisted, had returned to her in this delicate, silent unraveling. Outside, the wind howled faintly against the window pane, and for the first time in years I felt untouchable, not because I was loud, but because I had learned the strength of quiet dignity. Night fell, and the house that once pulsed with her laughter now sat in an eerie stillness, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I didn't need to see it to know she was unraveling. Every missed call, every whispered complaint from guests replayed in my mind like a slow, deliberate film. I thought of her smirk, the way she had leaned back in her chair, triumphant, as if she had written the story of my life. Now the irony was exquisite. Her control, her mockery, had become the stage for her own undoing. I poured another cup of tea, the warmth grounding me. Outside, the snow had begun to settle in thick layers, muting the world, blanketing it in silence. It reminded me of the quiet power of restraint, how things left untouched, unattended, could carry more weight than any dramatic confrontation. I pictured her standing in the middle of her ruined party, the lights out, the catering gone, her laughter replaced by stunned disbelief. For years she had used me as a punchline. Now the punchline was hers, whispered from every corner she had once dominated. And I understood fully, revenge doesn't need applause. It needs patience. It needs observation. It needs silence. And in that silence her empire of mockery crumbled, beautifully, entirely, without a single word from me. The next morning I woke to an unfamiliar calm. The world outside was muffled by fresh snow, the streets quiet as if the chaos of last night had been erased from everyone else's memory, but not from hers. I didn't need to check her social posts or call anyone to know the impact. It was there, lingering like smoke in the corners of her carefully constructed life. I brewed my tea slowly, savoring the aroma, letting it wrap around me like a warm cloak. Memories floated in my mind. The birthdays she had mocked, the gatherings where I had been sidelined, the countless whispers and smirks at my expense. Each one had carved a hollow place in me, but now, every echo returned to her, reflected in the empty rooms of her failed celebration. By noon the calls had stopped entirely. I imagined her, pacing her living room, her perfectly set table now a skeleton of absence. The DJ's equipment never arrived. The catering company booked and confirmed had vanished. The lights, automated and glowing just yesterday, refused to turn on. She had stared at the note I left on the table, the single piece of paper that carried no name, no accusation, only truth written in a calm, deliberate hand. And it had worked. 4 years she had thrived on control, on humiliation, on the public spectacle of my poor lady life. Today she was stripped of it all, left with nothing but questions, confusion, and the sting of her own arrogance. The silence that followed was deafening, yet exquisitely fair. I realized revenge is rarely about confrontation. It's about observation, patience, and letting the world mirror back what people refuse to see in themselves. I stepped outside into the soft snow, feeling its cold kiss on my cheeks. My sister's laughter, once a weapon, was now just a memory, fading in the distance like a candle burned down to its last flicker. I didn't need to revel in her defeat. The justice was quiet, profound, complete. I smiled, a small private curve of satisfaction. The lesson had been delivered, the balance restored, and I had done it with nothing but patience, silence, and a single sheet of paper. And as the snow continued to fall, blanketing everything in quiet dignity, I finally understood. Sometimes the loudest revenge is no revenge at all.